G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, let's get into this. Okay, before I start showing you or letting you listen to some sound samples of a couple of 12 strings I was trying, I'm going to just kind of do like give you an idea of what the video is going to be about. Basically, I've got three guitars, 12 strings that I tried in Long McQuaid Music Store, and there's three guitars. One is a Gibson, I think it's a Songwriter limited edition model. Looks like a hummingbird, whatever. The second is an Epiphone kind of juggernaut 12 string. I can't remember the exact models. And then the last one is a Denver, it's the cheapest of the three. So just to give you an idea, the Gibson was about $3,500. The Epiphone, I think, was about 400, and the Denver was 200. Now, the goal isn't to say that you pay more, you get more. It doesn't really work like that when it comes to acoustics, and sometimes not even electric guitars. But what the idea is, when you're judging a guitar, we'll listen to the sound samples, and you will be able to. Obviously, the Gibson kind of takes the cake, but there's a lot of other things we're going to discuss too, not just the actual which one sounds the best or which one plays the best or whatever. There's an overall that you have to look at and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to... Oh, one last thing before I play the samples for you is the Denver was a little out of tune. By a little out of tune, it was out of tune. We'll just put it like that. So it's kind of a little unfair for the Denver, but it doesn't mean it's not relevant to the video, because there's other things to talk about that. So I guess now I can cue the three sound samples in a row. It's about a couple of minutes. So, but what I want you to listen for is a few things. I want you to listen for the bottom end, the mid-range, the balance of the guitar, the projections of the guitar, the boominess of the guitar, the sustain of the guitar. I want you to listen to a bunch of things, but we'll get into that all after. All right, here we go. All right, so let's get back into it. Okay, before you comment on how out of tune the last guitar was, I know I didn't really catch it. I thought I knew it was out. I didn't realize it was out that bad, but I apologize for that. But it's still relevant because although it kind of puts the underdog at a huge disadvantage, there's lots of things we talk about. Now you're going to see a lot of pictures of different guitars and some violins and mandolins and stuff like that. And yes, I've owned all these instruments at one point in my life. Some of them I still do, like this Jackson Flying V, which is still a pretty cool guitar. I haven't played on stage with it yet, but that's coming. Oh yes. Okay, so what's the meat and potatoes of this video going to be about? Well, there's a lot of ways you can spend money on a guitar or any instrument in general and regret it. Not because you spent too much, but because you spent too much on what you didn't want. So you go into any music store, you have a plethora of acoustic guitars, electric guitars, it doesn't really matter. Or violins, cellos, double bass, pianos, drums, whatever. Whenever you're picking an instrument, it doesn't really matter what the instrument is. There's a few things that you need to have as a checklist of priorities. For me, it's always playability first. Now, the problem with playability first is, particularly with lower end guitars, typically, the action tends to be too high on them. Although it's a lot better than what it was years ago. Like, for example, this is about a $400 guitar. I can't remember what I paid for it all, but the action on it is pretty good. It'd be good enough for somebody just learning, although it's a little bit pricey for somebody just learning. I would go, you can get a fantastic guitar for like 250 bucks new. Is it going to sound stellar? No, probably not. But used, I mean, sometimes you get $1,000 guitars or $1,500 guitars used for like 180 to 250 bucks because they're a few years old, right? So price doesn't always dictate quality or whatever in any instrument. Now the thing is that if you look at, okay, well, can I play this thing? And what I ask myself when I pick up an instrument is, okay, a typical show night, when I do have a paying gig, which I'm still working on getting back into it, when I have a paying gig, I typically have to play 3 45-minute or 3 1-hour sets. Okay, so we're looking at least 3 hours of playing minimum. Can I play that instrument non-stop for 3 hours? If the answer is no, it means there's something, the playability is questionable. Now, when it comes to the 12 strings, a lot of people don't like 12 strings because they find them hard to play. But that's usually because they're picking up the cheaper ones. Let's talk about that for a second. The first guitar you saw, that Gibson, okay, 12 string, it basically played perfect from the nut right up to the sound hole. Like, it was unbelievable how well that guitar played. But at 3,500 bucks, you would expect that kind of perfection. So that guitar was basically, all the pieces were cut out on a machine, okay. And then they started to, do the automated stuff, put it together. And then when it was pretty much in the rough finish, they send it over to the master luthier, and he grabs that guitar and says, I'm going to work my magic on this thing. It's going to be epic. And when you're done, you end up with a superb machine such as you were hearing. Now, there's a lot that goes into a guitar that's 3,500 bucks, acoustic, for example. When we're talking electrics, after about 1,200 bucks, really you're paying more for cosmetics or name or whatever, or rarity or whatever. But typically up to that point, unless it's a really rare material that's being used, most of the time you're not going to get so much refinement on an electric to the point where so much work has been done that you're going to be able to justify the labor to charge thousands and thousands of dollars. But there are like limited editions and stuff like that. But with the acoustics is a little different, because the acoustics, the materials even make more of a difference. because you're using the raw sound of the guitar opposed to amplification and effects and etc. etc. I'm not saying it doesn't matter with electrics. It does. Some people can't tell the difference between a basswood body sound and a mahogany body sound, or a maple body sound, or an elder, or whatever. It all plays in. It all makes a difference. But it's really noticeable with the acoustics. So you get a guitar like that. The first thing I notice about it when I pick it up is that the guitar is pretty much flawless, you know. So on the cosmetic scale, it's a 10, you know. The second I notice is that if I play an F chord, the high F chord, you know, on a Gibson, and Gibsons are notorious for having the nut too high. Uh, you know, every Les Paul I've ever played, I don't know why Gibson does this. I think they go with the idea that if you can afford the Gibson, they don't know what strings you're going to put on it. They just put usually 10 gauge strings on it by default. You know, every manufacturer picks a string, and they just, you know, all their guitars get this, all their electrics get this, all their acoustics get this, and they just keep it simple, right? But both of my Gibson SGs, I've had to file down the E string and the B string a little bit, just to bring it low enough so when I play that F chord, it would stay in tune. But the rest of the guitar would intonate perfectly. Well, this Gibson wasn't like that at all. It was one step above. It was like, okay, both F chords in the first position, right in the first fret position, played perfectly in tune. Like there was no pulling the strings to the fingerboard. The action was that guitar. The action was so superb on it. You could do string bends with it. Like, I mean, it's a 12 string. You know what I mean? It felt like, to the touch, it felt like I was playing my 6 string electrics. That's how nice that the action was, like butter. You know, I know people hate that term, but it played like butter. So what ends up happening is all that finesse that they did, and every acoustic guitar you buy, pretty much you have to set up. But when they're at that price, it's done for you. Now, at the heel joint, same thing. The action is completely parallel the whole way down. Minimal amount of buzzing, other than the fact that they're new strings or whatever. You know, sometimes new strings can be a bit raspy, but not on that guitar. That guitar was just flawless that way, playability-wise. Now, the next thing is the aging of the wood, i.e. tone wood, right? So how long was that wood aged for? Who knows? But again, it develops character, sound. You see this a lot with violins. The older the wood, typically the more expensive the violin. So if you have wood that's aged 10 years, dried for 10 years, you know, you'll pay a certain amount for it, which is typically a prosumer cheapy instrument, right? You get 100-year, 200-year-old wood, you might pay several thousands of dollars just because of the fact that the wood's been aged that long. Now, does that make does it make it that much of a difference? Not necessarily. There is a moisture content in wood that once you get it, it's only going to get as dry as it's going to get, right? But there's other little things that happen too, with the grain and stuff like that, how it tightens up and everything. That makes a difference for the wood whenever you put it together. Well, it's the same with acoustics, same with the violin, same with pretty much any acoustic instrument. The wood does make a big difference, and of course the type of wood, and the grain and everything like that. So obviously the Gibson is a professional instrument that I was playing there, but would it be an instrument that I would want to gig with for 3 hours? Playability wise, yes. I could definitely play that guitar for 3 hours and my fingers would feel good at the end of the 3 hours. They wouldn't be tired, my fingers wouldn't be bleeding, my fingers wouldn't be strained. If your fingers are straining, anytime I hear people say this, it's like, I like high action because it builds finger strength. No, you're gonna get tendonitis doing that. You don't want any stress on your hand when you're playing a guitar. That's why I put playability as the #1 thing to look for in any instrument, because it's usually the playability that leads to people getting tendonitis. And if you like playing, trust me, you don't want that, because if you get that once, or carpal tunnel, that's the other one. You get that, your hands are just going to lock up on you. You won't be able to play. So there's no excuse for having an instrument that has ridiculously high action. Now, I get the running off the conveyor belt. That's why you get them like that. But they also have a philosophy too. We're going to keep it cheap. We're going to build it down to price and build it with a loose enough spec so that they can build them fast, right? This is where your Denver guitars come in. That said, is the Denver a complete write-off? No. Actually, the Denver might be a really good deal. So which brings me, I can rave about how great the Gibson 12 string was, but I'm going to talk about the Epiphone now. The Epiphone again at about $400 was a good deal. It played well in for up to the seventh fret. It played fairly well. It was a little harder to hold those strings down, but it played well. It played well. Up at the heel, not as well. You wouldn't be able to play that guitar for you'd be tired after 2 hours, 3 hours. You'd start to be playing sloppy after that. Your hands are going to start to get tired after about second hour. But the thing about that guitar is that the tone obviously nowhere near as nice as the Gibson, but however, you play the thing for a couple of years, you'll find even I had an Oscar Schmidt, however you said it, 12 string years ago. Okay, that guitar had the tonal qualities of a rotten tree stump when I first got it. 2 years later, it started to sound like something. Once the wood settles in, the more you, like any instrument, the more you play it, the better it tends to settle in. I find this with my violins. My violins now are starting to gain in volume because I play them a lot more. But getting back to that Oscar Schmidt, it was even more harsh than what the Denver guitar was. But I played it so much that it was virtually unplayable when I got it. It was, strangely enough, although it was acoustic guitar, it was a bolt-on neck. That's how cheap it was. And it was, I think it was around $200 as well. The Denver would have been a much better deal if it would have been available at the time. But the thing is that what I did to it was I took the bridge. I had to file it down because you couldn't play it past the third fret without really having to strain to play it, right? So again, for a beginner, it wasn't a great guitar because it was just too much effort to play it, and you would build bad practices right from the get-go. Where the Gibson is obviously not a great beginner guitar because, number one, if you don't know you're going to, let's say even if you knew you were going to stick with it, okay, the odds of you sticking with it is one thing, but yeah, the Gibson would be awesome to learn on because it's almost effortless to play. But the problem with that is it's $3,500, right? So if we got it willed to you or given to you, yeah, you lucked out. Yeah, the Oscar Schmidt, what I did with it is I took the nut down, filed the nut down, and I filed the bridge down, which pretty much any acoustic guitar under $1,000 you're going to have to do this to. Almost every acoustic guitar, I pick up off the wall, even Taylor's. I'll pick them up off the wall and say, this is a nice guitar, it plays pretty good. But if I had to play it for 3 hours, I'd have to take it to a luthier to either get it set up for me or myself, I'd do it myself. And my Ibanez AEL-10 was a $400 guitar. That's my workhorse guitar. It's been a workhorse guitar. It's paid for itself a few times over the years, and it basically, that guitar, the action was good when I got it. You could play it right up to the heat, right up to the sound hole. It was a little bit of a stretch, but a little bit of an effort. But it played like up to the 7th fret, no problem. So I never had to touch the nut on it because the Ibanez did a really nice job with the nut. Even though it's a plastic nut on it, they set it at the right height. And I've never had to do like I've had this guitar since 2004, 2005, whatever it is. I've never had to adjust the truss rod on it because of the 5-piece neck on it. The thing's just a complete tank. But I took down the bridge once a couple of years ago. Well, actually more than a decade ago, probably now. And it's getting to the point where, yeah, over time, a neck will start to bow forward on an acoustic guitar a little bit, and the action will start to come up a bit. And there's no way around that. It's just, the way the instrument's going to age. It just is what it is. And every instrument's going to be a little bit different. So I took that nut down, took that bridge, and I filed it right now. I could pretty much shred on that guitar like you wouldn't believe. I could play it for hours and hours and hours on end, and my fingers are never sore. My hand is never sore. you will get tired if you're doing a lot of hammer-ons, pull-offs, stuff like that. But the point I'm getting at is a $400 guitar setup plays like a dream. It might not have the best tonal qualities in the world, but it's a workhorse. It's reliable. You know, you will play better, and if you play better, you will sound better. And with lower action, you get better intonation, so the guitar sounds better. So even if it's not the best tonal qualities in the world, it won't matter. It won't matter because you're going to sound better anyway. Which this is where the Epiphone is pretty much like my Ibanez, except for it's a 12 string instead of a 6, and a few other little differences. But that Epiphone might be the best bang for the buck out of the three guitars, because even though, yeah, it was a lot boomier sounding than the Gibson, that has to do probably with the aging of the wood, and I think it was probably a birch top rather than a, instead of mahogany, whatever the recipe for the guitar was, it probably was a maple top or something softer, maybe something softer sounding on the Gibson anyway for the top, so that could have made a difference in the tone too, but definitely the Epiphone was brighter. Now, you'd say, well, if money was no object, would you just automatically buy the Gibson? Not necessarily. Why? Because it depends what you wanted to do. That Gibson would have made an awesome, awesome recording guitar. But as a live guitar, if you're the only guy playing guitar and you're playing and you're singing, no problem. But if you're playing and you have to play leads on that guitar, the very thing that makes that guitar amazing is also its main vice. The fact that it's so balanced that each string, both E strings produce about the same volume. That's what gives you that nice sweet tone, that nice balanced, that nice even sound, right? It doesn't cut through, it doesn't stand out, which makes it a good rhythm guitar. It makes it a good recording guitar for that. However, if you want to cut out, do a couple of leads, it blends in too much. That's the problem. Where the Epiphone and the Denver are very mid-ranged and very out front, much like my Ibanez. Which that's one of the features. The body style on my Ibanez is different. It's what Taylor would call the CE model, or the California country model, or it's more rounded. It's like a mini jumbo is what it is. But it's a very mid-ranged body style for sound, tone-wise. Different acoustic bodies will give you shapes, will give you different sounds. Typically, the smaller the guitar body, the more mid-ranged it is. The less balanced the strings are, the more out front, the more it cuts through. In other words, you can play leads on it, but the less warm the chording is. So the guitar I have, my Ibanez, is the best of both worlds, where it sounds good enough for chords, but it also sounds good enough when you want to do leads. Where the Dreadnought guitars and the Super Jumbos and stuff like that, J200 style guitars, they tend to be much better for chords, where it's just, you don't really want the guitar to stand, you just want it to fill in sound in the room, just really, really fill up that room. But you don't want it to really be distinctive note for note. That's kind of where you make a choice. That yes, the Gibson will sound better, especially when you're doing the chords and everything like that. But if you were playing live with it, I could just tell you by listening to it that you wouldn't hear me if I was doing, like, say, I don't know, the solo to Hotel California on it. You'd barely hear it. It would just blend in with the band too well. That's the problem. But it would really fill in that sound as the rhythm guitar, wouldn't it? It would just sound great. Now, you could play with mids and you can play with, but what I'm saying is the natural driving tone wouldn't be mid-ranged. It's a lower mid. The nicest 12 string I ever played, well, is this Gibson. Okay, the best sounding 12 string I've ever heard, and probably the second best playing 12 string I've ever played, was, although he's no longer with us, R.I.P. my friend Rick, but he had this Takamine, a 90s Takamine, Dreadnought style 12 string, and this would put the tone of that Gibson to shame. It was that good. It was just, I never heard something with such a, like, so, it was such a sweet tone, such a balanced tone, but it seemed like it was a really, really quiet guitar. Now, one of the things about these really quiet guitars, when it's really quiet to your ear, there's usually a bit of a parlor trick going on. A lot of times the guitar isn't that quiet. It's just that it's so balanced, it's not hitting you with the harshness like the cheaper guitars do. So in other words, that Gibson is probably just as loud as the Epiphone and the what you call it, the Denver. But the problem is that the Denver and the Epiphone are so mid-range and so bright that it sounds like it's louder. So it's not necessarily projecting any more volume. It's just the mids are in a different spot, the natural tone mids of it, right? So when you have a guitar that each string is really well balanced, which is usually something that a Luther looked after or set up for you, that's when you run into the wow, it sounds so quiet, but it's not really that quiet. But this guitar, this Tackmine, was quiet. It was a very quiet guitar. But that's also what made me discover this whole mid-range thing, because I was playing this other, box with strings on it. I don't know what it was. It might have been a Seagull or a Norman, but the early models that were really cheap, they're not bad now, but in the beginning, they were a budget guitar when they first came in on the scene, right? So, well, maybe not first on the scene because they've been around for a long time, but when they started getting popular in the 80s, 90s, that type of thing. And it was a really harsh sounding guitar, but it just, every note, was just like a clank over top of this beautiful sounding 12 string. The 12 string just couldn't cut through it. It just, and stuff like that. But my friend Rick at the time, he basically was a country player. That's the only guitar he played. He had an electric, he had a bunch of other guitars, but it's the only guitar he played. And I understand why. I played it a few times, and I was just like, I just loved that 12 string. I just sit there banging away on the E chord and the A minor and the D minor, the chords. That's the chords I just love to hear on those 12 strings. They're just so dramatic sounding, right? But this guitar, I don't think he paid $1,500 for it new, maybe 12. And again, I yet to hear another 12 string. I could still hear it in my head, and this is so many years ago. This is like 2 decades ago that I last heard this thing, maybe more. And yet it still rings in my head because it left such an impression. I'm like, that guitar is phenomenal. Playability, I would say this Gibson played a little bit better, like splitting hairs. Now the third best 12 string I've ever heard in my life, and I regret not buying it, was a J200 style Epiphone 12 string. And I didn't buy it because it didn't have a built-in pickup. That's it. It was $700, but it had such a stellar tone to it, and the playability wasn't bad. It was really good. You could play it the whole way. Like, it would be a guitar you would play for 3 hours and not worry about having to go get an operation on carpal tunnel, in a couple of years. It was a really nice guitar, and I should have bought it. I've played other ones. In fact, there's a couple of Epiphones that I've pulled off the wall that have just completely blown my mind of how good a tonal quality is. There was an Elvis model one. It was a 6-string, and I remember playing it. I was just blown away how good it sounded, and it was like $800 or something like that at the time as a signature model. I was just like, I was like, wow. Now I've played probably a million different guitars. My philosophy when I walk into a music store is whatever's on the wall, try it. I know people have to shop within their price range. That's fine. I get that. But get yourself some perspective of comparison. Because a lot of times the guitar that you think is so cool and nifty, and just by the way, I painted this violin myself. That was my second violin. I don't have it anymore, but it wasn't a very good one. It was a Cornelli one, but I thought I did a good job on the paint. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is that you're going to look at a guitar in a magazine, online, whatever, say that's the coolest guitar ever. You're going to go pick it up in reality at a music store somewhere if they have it in stock, and you're going to go, feels kind of cheap. You know what I mean? Like The gimmicks wear off very quickly after you've got perspective. Now, if you're the type of person, okay, you got $300 in your pocket, so you will not pick up another guitar over the price of $300 in the store. Your only comparison is going to be the $300 guitars. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great guitars for 300 bucks. That Les Paul right at the top, that was a workhorse for me for 13 years. That's a 1992 Gibson Les Paul Standard, Epiphone Les Paul Standard, and that guitar, mahogany body, everything. The only thing it didn't have as nice a pickups. This guitar was actually awesome, the Hammer Diablo. I regret getting rid of it. But the thing is that that guitar was a really good sounding guitar, and I even played around with putting in new pickups. Once you put in the new pickups, you couldn't tell the difference between the Les Paul Standard and the Epiphone. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. It's like, no, the Gibson is so much better. I'm not a purist like that. I go by, how did it play? Well, when I set up that Les Paul, people would... my other guitar player used to always ask, because I'd always bring it as my backup. This was my main guitar. And I'd play the Les Paul's backup. And when I wasn't playing, he goes, hey, Reg, do you mind if I use this Les Paul for the night? And I know why, because it played so well. I mean, I really set this thing up really well. And it had a lot of shows on it. I mean, probably played live 200 times with it, give or take. Probably played over 300 shows in my life by now, you know, if you add up jam nights and everything, you know what I mean? I've played more full gigs than I did jam nights. Jam nights is actually kind of a reverse. I'm like back into the jam nights again, but whatever. But I mean, the frets held up on this. Yeah, like it was a really, really good guitar. It held tuning like a Les Paul would hold tuning, you know. The first 3 songs you're always, trying to get it into shape, but once the guitar warmed up, well, you could use a jackhammer on that guitar and it would stay in tune. It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was just one of those things that the tonal qualities of a guitar or any other instrument, you have to grab things that are outside your price range too, just to see, like you'll grab 5 guitars at the same price range and there's one that's going to stand out to you. And for every guitar that stands out for you, you're going to play 100 that are not. And this is important to know, because when I go into a music store, okay, I'll try everything, and it gets to the point where it's just this. You just swipe your fingers across the sound hole on an acoustic guitar, and it'll tell you whether you want to pick it up or not. It'll just tell you, okay, yeah, here's some more cardboard sound. You know what I mean? Or you'll hit it, so okay, that sounds a little interesting. They pick it up, and then it's like, okay, the frets are, sharp. It's and there are a lot of pricey guitars out there that are built really cheaply, so you have to watch out for that. Like Jackson. I love Jackson guitars, but I find they're very inconsistent with hit and miss. Ibanez I find very consistent, where here's the price range, they all play the same. Whereas a Jackson, you can get a $500 Jackson that plays like $1 million, or you can get a $500 Jackson that I would pay you to take. You know what I mean? And it just seems that's the way those guitars are. And the funny thing is, like, for example, some of the $1,200 Jacksons don't play as nice as the $500 Jacksons, and some of the $800 Jacksons are just outstanding. You know what I mean? And then and it's all over the map, so you have to try everything. Whereas Ibanez, it seems like as you go up, they tend to, and I'm not sponsored by Ibanez or nothing like that. It's just I've owned a few Ibanez over the years for a reason, and it was because of that reason they always seem to be consistent in their price range. But that said, you still had to compare them all. You still had to try them all. Fender are all over the map. With a Fender, you can get a $200 Stratocaster that you're going to take to the grave with you because it's so amazing. Or you could pay like $4,000 for a Stratocaster and the thing won't even stay in tune on you. Stratocasters are like that. Like Stratocasters, you have to try every single one of them on the wall to see which one is going to be the one you like. Sometimes, yes, I hate to say it, but sometimes those Mexican Strats are actually really, really good. Most of them are junk, like those what you call it, what's the spin-off brand for Fender. But anyway, you know what I'm talking, which ones I'm talking, the Strats and the Tellys there. But that's the thing, try them all. Because I remember back in the 90s, the Stratocaster Pluses, the 90s Strat Pluses, the best Stratocasters I think Fender ever made in their history. So naturally they discontinued them. You know what I mean? The Eric Clapton Stratocaster, I think it was 1,000 or 1,100 bucks. That thing was incredible. The Ingve one, but the Strat Pluses, I remember those were so well made. They had a bit of a gimmick with the locking tuners and stuff like that, and the roller bridge or whatever. But they were just the bridge quality was so nice. The fit and finish, they were so nice. They just played really good. They just played really well. Um, the Ingve Strat is awesome, but it's not. The Ingve Strat is a bit of a novelty guitar. You know what I mean? So at 1,800 bucks, like you want a novelty guitar. I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if it's going to be your main thing, like for example, the Ingve Strat at 1,800 bucks, okay, great guitar. Like probably the next to the Hot Rails uh, single coils. I think the Ingve pickups are probably the loudest single coils on the market. They're really hot. They're meant for shredding. In that sense, yeah, the guitar sounds great. I mean, the guitar weighs like it's a boat anchor, right? So it just has tons of sustain, and then you've got all the scallops on it. I love the Ingve guitar. Any chance I get to pick one up, I just love. But all you do is shred on it. You know what I mean? Like it's not a cording guitar. It's a hot rod guitar. However, it doesn't have at 1,800 bucks. It doesn't have a locking system or Floyd Rose on it. I don't know how Ingve's gotten away keeping his guitars in tune without a locking system. That's pretty amazing. It tells you what kind of player Ingve is. Pretty incredible. But you know what I mean, right there. So for 400 bucks, you can get a Jackson Flying V like I got with, you guessed it, a locking tuner system. A Floyd Rose on it. But the Floyd Rose on mine, okay, is a crappy Floyd Rose. It's chunky. It's not the best. But I knew that buying it, right? That said, I just picked up played another Jackson over when I was at the music store in Crackle Green. If you haven't seen these ones, it's just a Jackson Soloist in Crackle Green. That guitar, when I picked it up, number one, it was hefty. So I think it's a mahogany body, neck through body. I think it's a maple neck through, but you can't tell because it's all the Crackle Green. It looks cool, the fit and finish. The neck doesn't play any better than the Jackson I got sitting at home here. It's the same profile, whatever. The nut was a little bit, could be refined a bit because it's the way the locking is. For 800 bucks, but the Floyd on it, whatever they did different with that Floyd, you could do the kitty pearls on it, kitty growls on it. And I find, like, for example, Ibanez, their tremolo system is just fantastic. Their locking system is just fantastic. But that's what I mean. Like, and I remember trying another Jackson Soloist that was the really cool looking one. It was with the chlorine burst. It was like 1,200 bucks, and it was like, it just had a cantilever on there. That wasn't a tremolo, But this other one is like, I thought, okay, well, at 800 bucks they probably built it down to price. I was like, no, that guitar you could play pretty professional with it. Like, you would be happy with that guitar. It'd be a go-to guitar. And that's what happens with a lot of cheaper guitars is you get all these cheaper guitars that they're really cool because they look cool. Or they, like my Flying V I wanted a Flying V for the sake of a Flying V. That said, is it the best Flying V out there? Absolutely not. But can I do what I need to do on it? Yes. Could I play it for a 3-hour night? Yeah. But are the pickups balanced on it? No. I mean, the E string, the low E is a little thin, the high E is a little muddy, or the high E is a little thin, the low E is a little muddy, But that's what you would expect out of a guitar at that price range. Sometimes. However, I remember a BC Rich Mockingbird at, I think it was like 600 bucks. I remember I picked this thing up, and the sustain on it, it blew away any Gibson Les Paul I've ever tried. And I'm like, at that price, and the fit and finish was like this purple color. It had push-pull pots on it. It was just like, ebony ebony fingerboard. The neck binding was just, well, it didn't have binding on it, but the frets were just flawless on it, and I was just like, at that price range. So I've learned to never ever just sit there and say, I got $500. That's the only guitars I'm gonna. No, try them all, because if you've got a $500 in your pocket, try one at 5,000, and then try the one at 500. Try every one of them at 500, and do this with any instrument you have that you're going after, whether it's a flute, whether it's a guitar, a violin. I play multiple instruments right now. Um, I'm freaking out about my little A-style Epiphone mandolin that I picked up for $200 used. It was the M20, and that is one of the best mandolins I've ever played. Uh, Not the best sounding mandolin in the world. It's not too boomy. It could be because it's aged a bit that the boominess has gone out of it. It's a little bit over bright. It could be a little bit fuller on some stuff, but the sound overall is really good. I've played mandolins at $800 that don't have the sound of my little A style mandolin. I just played one at $400. I want to do a mandolin comparison too. I just played one at the Long and McQuaid for $400, and it sounded good. Now, mind you, it had the foam under the bridge to keep it from scratching, so that would hurt the sound of it. But it didn't have the sound that my Epiphone has, and it definitely didn't play quite as well as my Epiphone. And I got that thing used for $200, and I'm just like, it was just such a, like, I'm glad I didn't pass that instrument up, because it was a good instrument. And that thing, I'm just like, makes you want to play it and play it. Like, mandolins are very notorious for being difficult to play, especially the cheaper ones. Your fingers will bleed on them. You can play them for a half an hour, and then you got to take a breath, take a break, because your hands all stiffen up and cramping and stuff like that. Again, working on your carpal tunnel, right? Well, I don't get that with this mandolin. This mandolin, I can shred on it for hours on end. Heck, I'm playing Cowboys from Hell on it. You know what I mean? I'm having fun with this thing, and I've already taken it out live twice, and it's kind of like what this Gibson. It has a very aged sound to it, even though it's probably not as old. The wood's probably not as old, but this is a great little mandolin, because whoever had it before me probably went and had it set up. If not, if that's how Epiphone was sending them out the door, wow, buy an Epiphone. You know what I mean? I am a big fan of Epiphones. I've had quite a few of them. For example, the G400 guitars. They're fantastic little gig guitars. I mean, they're cheap, great learning guitar. They're not the best sounding or whatever, but they're a lot of fun. They're reliable. They stay in tune reasonably well. They can sound good enough. You know what I mean? Like, for the money, you can't beat it. You know what I mean? You can't beat stuff like that. And they're making them a lot nicer now too. I mean, they're making them almost as nice as some of the Gibsons out there. Colors wise. I mean, you can get all these burst colors. I'm like, okay, why don't the mainline SGs have all these burst colors that they're putting on the Epiphones? You know what I mean? Yeah, but a lot of people, again, they get hung up on the name. Now, me, am I a Gibson snob? Not a Gibson snob-ish. I do love my Gibsons. I want just about every model of Gibson SG ever made. I am a Gibson SG snob. That's my guitar. I'm not a Strat guy. I'm not a Tele guy. I'm a Gibson SG guy. I've always been a Gibson SG guy and Les Paul guy, but I've always been an SG guy. That's just every guitar in the world, I basically compare it to my SG61 reissue. The first time I tried an SG61 reissue, right after, which was around 1994, they went from the SG62 reissue, which I was about to buy, but I ended up buying my Ibanez RG750, the white guitar you see me as a young teenager there. That guitar got stolen. That was such a great guitar, that guitar. It was so good, that Ibanez RG750. You could do anything with that guitar. But I bought that over I was told, because I was a big Angus Young fan, I was totally set on buying that SG62 reissue. And then the year after, I ended up buying the Ibanez, but the year after they came out with this thing called the SG61 reissue, and I remember the first time I played one in the store, I was so blown away by it. It was okay. I mean, I'd been playing my Ibanez with the Wizard neck, and it was the next guitar that was seemed to be closer. There were guitars out there, but I played the BC Riches, the Gunslinger, and all those things. All those guitars didn't really, they didn't quite have that smooth feel, that really slippery neck. They didn't have that yet. Although some of them were pretty good. I remember some of the ESPs in the 90s were really good, but they were like 1800, 2800 bucks. They were just ridiculously. You couldn't, you couldn't afford them, but you could afford these other guitars that were, uh, a little bit cheaper. Like for example, the Hammer Diablo. When my Ibanez RG750 got stole uh, many moons ago, I'm still bitter about it to this day. That's like 30 years ago, right? Well, maybe not quite 30. Well, pretty close to 30 years ago. Uh, uh, I remember I walked in and I did the same thing. I tried to find another RG750. They didn't have anything in stock, and I don't think they were making that model anymore. I think it was now something else, RG550 or whatever they were calling it. And they didn't have any left in stock, so I was like, I was going through guitar withdrawals, and I saw this emerald green Hammer Diablo guitar sitting on the wall. So well, there's no binding on it, so I'm no the frets are going to be sharp, and I'm not going to like it. But I was like, it looks cool. Well, I'll try it anyway. Well, I pick it up, I plug it in. I'm like, this thing freaking rocks. It sounded so good. I don't remember because Hammer would send out guitars, like as one-offs kind of thing. Like here's the model, the Hammer Diablo. Okay, options, everything. So I don't know if I had two Trembacher in there. Um, I don't know if I had I think I had a Screaming Demon and a JB. That don't quote me on that because I can't remember. But I had Duncan's in there anyway. With the Alder body, I like the sound of the Alder body. It sounded different from why Ibanez. I find an Ibanez sounds like an Ibanez. And they all sound like Ibanez's. All sound like an Ibanez. They're very, like you can't mistake them for anything else. Once you get used to them, you know you're listening to an Ibanez. It's that Joe Satriani, Steve Vai kind of sound. You always get them. But that's what makes them great shredder guitars too. Those super, super, super jumbo frets give them that kind of Super Mario Brothers kind of sound when you're soloing sometimes. And that's not for everybody, but yeah, whatever. But anyway, getting back to the yeah, the every place I played live, people would freak out about the sound of this Hammer Diablo guitar. They're like, wow, that guitar just, and it would be sound men telling me this. They're like, dude, and they would even say it through the mic. They'd be like, dude, that is an awesome sounding guitar. Like it was like a sound man's dream. It's just like the highs, the lows, the output, the aggression of the guitar. If you ever get a chance to play a Hammer Diablo, if you get a chance to buy one and the neck isn't warped on it, buy it. Like I just you're welcome. You're welcome. The reason why I got rid of mine is the neck did warp on. I told the story many times in other videos, so I'll save it for this one. But point was, I would have passed that guitar by if I hadn't just been going down the line, and that guitar just stood out. I was just like, wow. And I know we get, when it comes to instruments, we get a brand. We get fanboy about stuff, where you get the concept in your head that I'm only going to play a Strat, I'm only going to play a Tele, I'm only going to play a Gretsch, I'm only going to play a a flying V of some sort, Jackson, or I'm only going to play Ibanez or whatever it is, or Hammer. And we don't try the other guitars. Try as many guitars, because you'll see like 10 guitars at the same price range, and one of them is just going to be like, okay, I want that guitar because it looks really cool, but then this one just plays so well, and you know that that would be a go-to guitar. The problem is when you have 8 really awesome guitars in your house at the same time, which one do you play? You know what I mean? like that's like dating 8 supermodels at once. You know what I mean? Like it's like which one do you play? Like what do you feel like? I mean, I've had double necks. So you can see some of the guitars I've had are pretty cool. Um, and I've had over 40 guitars in my life. So the thing about that is, I got a good comparison. I used to work in a guitar shop years ago too, and I do the same thing with all the acoustics. All the acoustics are even more difficult to find a good one because you know that as soon as you buy one, you're going to find one that's just a little bit better, just a little bit, just a little more, just a little more, just a little more. Plays just a little bit better, tones just a bit better. But you're looking for an overall package. Um, I guess which will bring me back full circle to one last guitar. Like when I walked into the Long McQuaid when I made that video, there wasn't a lot of electrics on the guitar on the wall that I was like, okay, all the Gibson stuff was like, I mean, because they are the Gibson supplier for Canada, I think. Is Long McQuaid. So I went in there. Yeah, their Gibson and Fender was full stock and Gretsch and everything like that. But all the whiz bang guitars, the fast fretted stuff, there wasn't a lot there that was really piquing my interest. It seems like they didn't have that much in comparison to normal. But there was another Jackson I tried. It had a reverse headstock, a fixed bridge. It looked like it had a Floyd Rose on it, like a Floyd Rose saddle, and it had the fine tuners, but it was a fixed bridge. And I picked that one up, and I was just like, okay, at $800, this guitar was a player. It's just it didn't have a Floyd on it, right? So it's like, but I was like, if you wanted that guitar, the first thing that stood out on me was that it was sustaining because it was a fixed bridge, and the action was superb. I was like, wow, and I didn't plug it in, but I didn't need to because it was like I strummed it a bit. I was just like, okay, that's just a matter of how nice are the pickups at that point. This thing's going to be a good recording guitar, or whatever. I picked up the cheapest Jackson 7-string. It was like a plank with strings on it. So I was just like, I picked up the other LTD 7-string. It was used. Much better, much better. But then I picked up the what's her name? The Alice Cooper's guitar player, Nina Strauss. Nina Strauss, is that her name? Anyway, her Diva guitar, the Ibanez Diva guitar. I don't know if you've seen this. It's kind of like a grayish, greenish color burst, and I picked it up and I played it, and I was like, and when she had it designed, she said she didn't want to make it a chick guitar because the problem with that is nobody buys chick guitars. Like 5 chicks will buy it and that's it. She wanted to make sure guys would like to play it. And considering the way she shreds on it, like she is an awesome guitar player. And I picked up that guitar and I was like, the first thing that popped into my head is this guitar is really, really good. The neck is super slippery smooth. The frets don't cut your hands at all. Obviously, the tremolo on it is just wicked, and it looks good. And I'm like, this is something I would buy. But at $1,800, could I find something better? I don't know. I mean, that one was a really good overall package. It's just, do you like the style? Like at least like it was a good-looking guitar too. But like it played amazing. It was a really good guitar. So value to the dollar. Would I give up my Gibsons for it? Probably not. And my SGs? No, I wouldn't give it up for that. So, like I say, try everything off the wall, because sometimes you might have a $500 in your pocket, but you might find a guitar at $300 that blows everything in that price range away, and you'll just say, that is a guitar I'm going to play the crap out of, and can play the crap out of. That brings me back to the Denver, the last guitar, the one slightly out of tune. Well, maybe not slightly out of tune, but I mean, I didn't have a lot of time to play around. There was one more guitar that I was going to try, 12-string that I was going to try, and it was a CE 150, Taylor CE 150. I think it was the model, or N150, one of the 150 line Taylors. But somebody had probably tried. It was a 12-string, and somebody probably it sounded like they tried to put it in open DADGAD tuning, and it was just so far out that I didn't want to play around trying to tune this thing up, because I ended up breaking this, string or whatever. I just didn't, wasn't afraid that it was going to break a string, but it's just, I just didn't want to, who knows what they had it cranked to, and I didn't want to play around with it, so I didn't. But otherwise, it felt like it would have been a good guitar to at about 11 or 1200 bucks. It would have been a good guitar to be an all-arounder. You know what I mean? Maybe next time in there, hopefully one of the staff will have fixed the tuning problem with it. Okay, so now that brings me back to the Denver, and I'm going to finish up on this Denver guitar. So 200 bucks, what did you get? Well, you got this really brackish, harsh sounding guitar. Why? Probably made out of the cheapest woods available for what it was, constructed as quickly as possible by machines. The action at the heel was almost virtually unplayable. You couldn't really play this guitar. Even at the first fret was kind of, you were pressing, you were noticing the tension that you were pressing to get some sound out of it, right? So you'd say, why waste your money? Well, depends how you look at it. If you were a person just learning, learning, 200 bucks, I can guarantee that guitar would stop you from playing guitar. So no, not great for a beginner. Price range is right. It's not a big investment if you don't stick with it. But that said, I would say rent a guitar. If you got a Long McQuaid or some sort of music store like that, if you're in Los Angeles, there's a lot of places you can rent guitars for the month. You might spend 20 bucks a month renting a guitar. See if you're going to stick with it. Then you can rent something that's playable too. I mean, they had a Fender Strat and a Les Paul on the wall that you could rent for, a few bucks a month. Like, I mean, like a Stratocaster for like, 20 bucks a month. Yeah, so you rent it, or an acoustic guitar, you rent it for 20, 30, 40 bucks a month. You find out if you're going to stick with it, and then you invest, right? But let's say you're going to stick with it. So who is this guitar for? Well, I'll tell you who's going to make advantage of on this guitar. Beginners, no. People who are on a tight budget, but have don't know how to set up a guitar, no, that's not good. This is not the guitar for you. You're going to hate this thing. Somebody who knows how to do set the action on it, take down the bridge, take down the nut, make the guitar playable again, or make the guitar playable. That's who that guitar is for. So in other words, that's a jam night guitar. I would buy that guitar for maybe $200. Okay, not expecting to win any sound over it. But here's the nice thing about 12-string guitars. Is even something as bad out of tune as that Denver, if it would have been in tune the whole way through, I can guarantee you it would be, what's called sonically pleasing. There are no bad sounding 12 strings out there. You know what I mean? Like there's some that sound not as good as others, but they all kind of naturally sound good, right? It's a 12 string. It just has a nice ring to it. You got that natural coursing sound, right? So you could take a guitar like that. If you know how to set up the action yourself, then that's a steal. It's just you're going to have to put a little bit of work into it to make it playable. Will it ever play as good as the Epiphone? Probably not. Now you'd say, well, why not somebody buy it and then put the money into it, get a Luther to take, do everything, and you'd save money over the Epiphone? No, at that point, if you have to go to a Luther to get it done, I would say no. Because you're going to spend almost the same price as you would if you just bought the Epiphone, and the Epiphone's already there. The Epiphone 2, I would take down the bridge a bit, just to make it a little bit more playable. But other than that, yeah, the Denver, it still sounded okay. It had a lot of drive. The Denver would be a great busking guitar, not because it's cheap and whatever, that's part of it, but because of that really loud, attention grabbing sound it gets, because of that high mid-range, right? That really loud, it projects. Again, it might not necessarily have been any louder than the Gibson guitar, volume wise, but the tone really cuts through. You hear it on the other side of the room. It smashes people in the face as they walk by. So for somebody who's busking, somebody who's doing a one-man show, or somebody who wants to play leads in the band, that guitar is going to be the one that's going to cut through the most. So it might not be the most tonally pleasing, but here would be the dream team. Okay, you set up the action on the Denver, right? You have your rhythm guitar player playing the Gibson, pretty much holding all the nice sound. And whenever you need a really loud lead break, you get the guy to cut in with the Denver. Oh yeah, it would just completely stand out. Like it would be cool. It'd be very peaky. It'd probably even distort and be buzzy, but it would really stand. It would sound good. It would sound stellar. And the reason why I know this is because this is how I've picked my acoustic guitars over the years. You have acoustic guitars that are, like I say, if you're the only guy on stage, the Gibson, the Gibson, the Gibson. If you're on a tight budget, okay, but you can swing a little more, you'll live with the Epiphone for the rest of your life, and you'll be fine with it. The Denver, you're gonna buy it, can't waiting to, with the notion of not being able to wait till you get your next guitar, and that's what I'm trying to avoid you from doing, is buying the guitar that's going to make you want another guitar. I want you to be able to buy a guitar or a violin or whatever it is that you don't want to replace, like my mandolin. Now you'd say, well, if that's the case, all these great guitars that you had, how come you don't have them anymore? Well, there's always another one that's going to pop up that's going to be a little better. But at one point, I had like a bunch of $500 guitars sitting there, and that's when I had four guitars sitting there, all around 500 bucks, 400, 500 bucks. Okay, and I remember kept telling myself, I can't afford an SG61. It's too expensive, too expensive. But when I added it up, I had $2,000 worth of guitars sitting there, of guitars that every time I played them, it's like they were good, but I always wish I had a little bit better. Now, my SG61 reissue, I bought that in 2009, so I've had that one for 10 years. My SG3, I've had that since 2006. Yeah, the longest guitar I've ever owned was that Harmony Rocket, the one with the 3 pickups on it, fancy pickups. I had that for over 20 some odd years. That was my first electric guitar. I no longer have that. But that one, I got rid of it because I just wasn't using it. I kind of regret getting rid of it because it was my first electric guitar, but I'd rather see people use it than not. And so I sold it. Because it had limited use for what I could do. But it was a really good recording guitar. It wasn't a very good live guitar because it was just whatever. But the point is I have no inclination to ever replace my Gibsons. So that means I'm not going to just keep buying cheap guitar after cheap guitar after cheap guitar. And over time, replacing a cheap guitar with another cheap guitar, you're still fantasizing about, if it's something you're going to stick with. I know a lot of times you can't, just splurge the cash all down at once, but you don't have to. Some places you can do payments. I don't recommend going into debt for an instrument, but you can. Like if I had a more stable income, yes, I could do payments on that Gibson if I wanted, but that's probably not the 12 string I would buy, because I'm thinking live performance. I want a guitar that does really well live and okay in the studio. If I'm thinking studio, yeah, that's the guitar. You know what I mean? But the last thing I'll leave with, before the video cuts off, is that the goal is that if you get something that'll that plays well enough, like my Ibanez AEL10. I've had, like I say, that thing's been a great workhorse. It's made me money. It's paid itself off, and I use it at every jam night. It still plays excellently. It's not the best sounding guitar by any stretch of the imagination. It's well intonated, and you can play it for 3 hours straight. Okay, that guitar will last me until I can afford something else or save up, whatever. But I'm happy with that guitar. Like, even if I were able to get that Gibson, I don't think I'd get rid of that Ibanez AEL10 because it's been such a good workhorse guitar. Same like this mandolin. I have a feeling this mandolin's going to be in my hand when I'm dead in my coffin, you know what I mean? It's coming with me. Why? Because that mandolin is fantastic. It's going to take it's going to take one hell of a mandolin to make me want to put that one aside. And that's what I want for you guys. Whether it's a violin, a guitar, whatever, I want you to be happy with your purchases, because there's a ton of ways you can spend money and regret it. And sometimes you don't have to spend as much. Some of the best instruments I've ever bought were cheaper than what I thought they were going to be. You know what I mean? Like, the value to the dollar, so to speak. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because I can go on forever in a day. And I'm going to do another one, hopefully on mandolins, but that'll be a longer down. But anyway, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and next to that, have yourselves a great day, eh?